Good morning. It's again another Bitcoin update. Today is the January the 9th, and we are like less than 24 to 48 hours away from the Bitcoin ETF approval from SEC. So this morning we have this interview in Squawk Box. So let's take a look.
Now on the approval or rejection of the spot Bitcoin ETFs, though approvals are pretty widely expected at this point. Joining us right now on what that could mean for crypto at large, John Palmer is the president and CEO of Digital. It's a separate entity from parent company CBOE Global Markets, which is the listing agent, or I should say exchange, for spot Bitcoin ETFs. CBOE Digital is not involved in the process of launching the ETFs, but it would benefit from their approval. What do you think we're going to hear, and is there a wrinkle in what we might hear?
Well, I mean, I think you've seen quite a lot of progress made, really, the last couple of weeks. Even yesterday, we saw some back and forth between the commission and the issuers on the S1s. So I think that's good sentiment, right? I mean, progress here is good. You're seeing the agencies engage. You're seeing the issuers engage, and all the filings from the exchanges are all up to date at this point from what we can see. So
let's assume that there's an approval. Do you think there's certain ones that get approved? Do you think it's all of them get approved at the same time? How does that work? And then what does it mean in terms of, as they get launched, how much Bitcoin they're going to be buying in the market, what that does to the price? Have we already bought the rumor, sell the news? What's the thought?
Yeah, it's obviously a pretty big competitive milestone, right? We have quite a few different issuers with filings in. The SEC has different dates for different rule filings on the exchange side that they can approve, but there's a couple different scenarios, right? They could, as you mentioned, approve a few of them out, or they can approve them all at once. So time will tell, I think, between today and tomorrow how that's actually going to go. And then you still have the S1 aspect that has to be made effective, right? And so we've seen the agency engage with the issuers on that. And so both the rule filings and the S1s have to be both approved and made effective before they actually can list it.
Okay, so impact on price. For those who've been speculating the past month or two or three now that this day is going to come, has it moved as much as it's going to move? Is this the day it gets announced, it moves another 20, 30, 40? I mean, what are we talking about here?
It's hard to expect because we have to really see how the capital flows into the ETF. I think obviously an approval is bullish, but we've seen a big move recently. So the best part here is that there's going to be additional investors that get access to Bitcoin that maybe don't really want to natively hold it themselves, right? So they're going to be able to buy it.
If I told you it was going to move 15%, that I didn't tell you which way.
I don't think I'd be surprised.
And right, but pick away.
Well, it's like that every day, practically.
Yeah, not really, but pick away, up or down.
I think it depends on which way the approval, if it's approved or not approved.
Well, let's say it's approved.
If it's approved, no. I'm saying if it's approved.
Go with approved.
If it's approved, I think it's likely we see more of an upside than a downside.
You do?
Yeah.
And then do you see it becoming something? I mean, I remember we've had people on this broadcast that come on. Kathy Wood says it goes to $500,000 a Bitcoin. We had people years ago come on and say it'd be $1 million a Bitcoin. Do you think that's directionally where this all goes? Do you think that there's sort of a cap on what it is? Do you think every investor in the world decides that they need to have some portion of their assets in Bitcoin?
I think it depends, again, on how much we see flow in, right? Bitcoin right now, market cap is just over 915 billion. Right, so even a successful ETF launch in 1 year could be $10 or $15 billion in AUM. That would be quite successful compared to some of, even some of the most successful ETF launches. So even that is, we're only talking 1 or 2% of the current market cap of Bitcoin. So how much is that really going to inflate the price, to the levels you mentioned, 500,000 or $1 million? Time will tell. But again, we also know there's a fixed supply of Bitcoin. So how that impacts the supply and demand dynamics of the market and how much capital is actually flowing into the ETFs, I think will be very focused.
And what's going to happen to the price and the fees around these ETFs? There's part of me that thinks that ultimately they're just all going to get compressed to close to zero because there's nothing that's going to be particularly distinct about any of these funds.
It's a good question, right? I think you see different expense ratios and pricing, across similar ETFs, even in today's world. So whether we see the prices and the fees, or at least I should say the fees of the different issuers and the different ETFs converge or not, I think time will tell. There's obviously that competitive nature, and I think we'll have to wait to see how the capital.
And is there always going to be a discount on these ETFs?
It's a
I mean,
good
you
question.
look at like the
Time will tell.
Grayscale
Yeah.
ETF, and there's always been a massive discount,
Yep.
right?
Well, I think there's the expense side of it, right? And so how they manage that and how large the expenses are going to impact, what the investors are going to get on return, based on the versus comparing maybe holding.
And what do you think about the folks who haven't gone into this? So are we going to see a Vanguard all of a sudden, which has been sort of, on the sideline, jump in? Do you think there's always going to be a group of folks in finance who are just like, we're not doing this?
I do. I think there are going to be folks that maybe always will say that's not for us. This is our core business, and so this is where we're going to stick. And then you're going to have others that maybe are, maybe more on the bleeding edge of the spear of different types of products and offering them. And so I think for the folks that aren't in the bucket yet or aren't at the table ready to list, they're going to watch this and they're going to see how successful it is.
Bullish for a Coinbase, bullish for a Robinhood. Not because they do it because people are going to buy it as ETFs instead. How do you think about the exchange universe?
Right. So we run a spot exchange at Cboe Digital. So from my perspective, there's a couple different points. Right. You're going to be able to access Bitcoin through an ETF and not have to buy it natively. So you're going to have those participants enter the market. But I don't think that someone that already is trading Bitcoin is going to choose the ETF over the Bitcoin. They've already made that journey. Right, but now you're going to have market makers, you're going to have larger institutions, you're going to have potentially pension funds, RIAs that are involved in this ecosystem, and so it's going to grow the demand and it's going to grow the participants, and they're going to need a place to hedge. Sometimes they hedge natively with just spot Bitcoin, sometimes they might actually use derivatives. And so that's where we see the true growth from our perspective is in the ecosystem and the use cases beyond it.